almost 1 year now that we are back in office, and we did manage quite well with the pandemic COVID-19. We are at the top of Western Balkan 6 in terms of low death rate and high vaccination rate. When I took office on March 2021, there were 0 vaccines, 0 contracts on vaccines, and no negotiations on contracts. We didn't take any vaccines from Russian Federation or China, only those verified by European EMA and American FDA. Other than that, also economy is doing well. According to Central Bank of Kosovo, we had a 9.9% of economic growth. Business turnover increased by 30% in comparison with previous year. Annual state budget by 12%. Exports by 2/3. Foreign direct investments by 53%. Tax revenues by 1/3, without changing fiscal policy. Because when people are hopeful, they rather spend than save. And when they see that government is fighting corruption and is uncorruptible itself, they are more ready to pay taxes. So all in all, we are doing well. But when it comes to relations with Serbia, things did not improve very much.
Mm-hmm. That would be my next question. How's the security situation?
Because they continue to, in one hand, deny crimes committed during the war, and on the other hand, they do not want to recognize our independent country, meanwhile strengthening their links with Russian Federation.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much. One last question before I go to Chairwoman Mrs. Strack-Zimmermann. Do you have a reserve in Kosovo?
We have 3,000 reserve in Kosovo because we managed to make law with amendments which enabled us to have 5,000 soldiers for Security Force of Kosovo and 3,000 as a reserve corpus. I think reserve is very important because you cannot talk and think of security without thinking of the future. And when it comes to security and defense, potentiality is not less important than actuality. And the reserve corpus plays exactly in that field. So we look forward to cooperate with NATO partners, Germany as well, in order to have better equipment and better training for our reserve corpus.
A very bright and broad possibility to use reservists in different situations. But of course, the knowing that it's reservist and not 100% active soldiers 365 days a year. So the Kosovo perspective, you told us how many reservists you have. Where are you going? Are you increasing the number? Are you changing the training? What is your political agenda with the reservists? So on this platform, you can tell us everything.
After changing the law on Kosovo Security Force, we have the right for 5,000 soldiers and 3,000 reservists. So it amounts to 60% of what is regular force in addition to that. We look forward to recruit these people from civil society. And in this way, we want to match the challenges of the future, which are characterized by complexity and uncertainty. So in a world where autocracies have been rising in recent years, and where foreign policies are changing very fast, alliances and partnerships, we have to face the unpredictability of the future. That means that we must have a reserve for whatever comes in the near future, which we cannot foresee at present. So we can foresee that we will not be able to foresee. And I think the reservists are very important in this sense. On the other hand, we have increased by almost 100% budget for Kosovo Security Force. And we like to invest that in new military equipment, but also new trainings. And not only in combat capabilities in case of conflicts and wars, but also in case of natural disasters. We have seen wildfires during the summer, we have seen floods during the autumn and spring, we've seen the situation with the pandemic, with different kind of natural disasters, that we must be ready. And to this end, a reservist can be even more capable than ordinary soldiers. That's why we think that they are indispensable.
Do you have special fields where you recruit the reservists from? For example, here in Germany, we have a strong cyber reserve. We have a strong reserve in the medical issues. So we're recruiting on all parts, from all parts, but we have, of course, some very strong groups in the reserve. Is it the same in Kosovo, or?
I don't think that in Kosovo we have one specific group which could be like a hearth for recruitment. In Kosovo we have this great advantage of young population. So we are ancient people, but young population. And average age is 30 years. So I think that this is our greatest advantage.
That leads me to another question to you, Mr. Prime Minister. What do you expect, for example, from Germany?
I think it is very important to have continuation of German contingent within KFOR forces in Kosovo. NATO is very important for our security and defense. We want to join NATO, and the first milestone would be Adriatic Charter, A5. And internally speaking, Kosovo Security Force with KFOR troops is having a very good cooperation. We are learning a lot from each other. And this exchange of experience brings institutional cohesion. And the security architecture of our country benefits a lot. Since June 1999, when first German soldiers came to Kosovo, until today, we have no incident in our country. And people appreciate very much the engagement, the role, and the contribution of Germany for peace and security of Kosovo. We know very well, and it is quite often affirmed, the role of Germany for economy of Kosovo. We have huge diaspora in Germany. 400,000 Albanians from Kosovo live in Germany. They work here, they send remittances back home. But at the same time, we tend to forget the contribution of Germany for peace and security in our country. So I think that KFOR in Kosovo should always have a German contingent, and we just can see how we can increase cooperation with our plans to further develop and build up Kosovo security forces in two main aspects. One of them is general national resilience, and the other one is national response capabilities.
Mr. Prime Minister, am I allowed to ask you two questions? First of all, how is your budget? What do you do? And how do you spend the money? I mean the defense budget, just the defense budget. And second question, how do you look on the debate in Germany? I think you followed these 2% debate in Germany. How is your impression? The number is high. We're not spending just a few euros on the budget, but of course, concerning the GDP, it's not 2%. How is your impression from an outside view? Diplomatic.
First of all, in Kosovo, this year we're spending 1.3% of our GDP for defense. We have increased the budget for defense, and it's still 1.3%. We look forward to reach 2%. And we are aiming there, but we cannot do it immediately, because we have to increase capacities and capabilities, and with a certain timetable, get to 2%. We want to join NATO one day, sooner better, but we also have there 4 non-recognizers, 1 less than for EU. On the other hand, we believe that some of the military engagements of Germany internationally have proven that Germany contributes a great deal to global security. And in this sense, I think that people expect outside of Germany, from Germany, more than before. So perhaps in 21st century, people expect more presence of German defense and security forces around the world, and especially for European continent. We have to be careful with the situation with Russian Federation, since they are trying to use different also non-state actors within EU soil for destabilization. Now that EU is trying to build up energy independence from Russian gas, slowly but certainly, apparently it seems that the only comparative advantage of Russian Federation remains the army. That's why we have to be vigilant and careful, all of us. And I think that also Germany has huge GDP, so 2%, I know it's a lot. But nonetheless, I believe it should try to aim that, because sustainable development and sustainability of the progress depends on one hand from taking care of the environment, but also from the fact that people who work must feel safe and secure, also in geopolitical respect, and they must feel that the products, the fruits, the results of their labor will be safe and secure. So in this sense, sustainability has to do with both environment but also security.
One short question, because I thought about when you told something about the influence of Russia. Do you have veteran groups in Kosovo that are influenced by Russia? Do you have groups like paramilitary groups or veterans?
In Kosovo, you cannot find Kosovar citizens who would be willing to engage in any kind of communication, let alone cooperation with Russian Federation. We are absolutely skeptic.
Also the Serbs, the Serbian minority?
But illegal structures of Serbia, they might be influenced by Russian Federation, and we are very much worried, and we're following the situation carefully with our intelligence service and security sector in order not to allow that anything which happened in Bosnia with Republika Srpska and Dodik takes place in Kosovo. We know very well that President Putin got into power only 2 months after liberation of Kosovo, became prime minister in Moscow, and he annexed South Ossetia and Abkhazia in Georgia in the same year when we declared independence. So there is no month passing without him mentioning us. So in this sense, we are very concerned, but not in terms of population, but only elements of illegal structures of Serbia.
Because when you build up a reserve or strengthening the reserve, it should be the reserve of Kosovo, based on the constitution, based on fundamental rights, citizenships and things like that, and democracy. I think that's very important. That's very important for the reserve in Germany, that reservists know why they are reservists.
Yes.
On the fundament on our constitution, that's very important, especially for Germany with its history. So I think it's important for every country, because you have trained soldiers there. Maybe they don't have weapon in at home like in Switzerland, but they have some special capabilities, knowledge, and you have to take care of it.
Just one thing, if I may add, in September last year, when we had this tension at the northern border crossing with Serbia regarding reciprocity of car plates, Russian ambassador to Belgrade, Mr. Alexander Bochan-Harchenko, came together at the border crossing with the Minister of Defense of Serbia, Mr. Stefanovic, and they were inspecting a massing of Serbian troops, military equipment and armored vehicles, and a fighter jet, MiG-29, was in the air. They've gotten 14 MiG-29s, 8 donations from Belarus, and 6 from Russian Federation. When we had this tension, I at most appeared with my Minister of Internal Affairs, never with my Minister of Defense. But Serbia always appeared with the Ministry of Defense at the forefront, treating it as a war issue. And I think this has to do also with the fact that last year, in mid-October, they have participated in what they called Slavic Shield, a military exercise. Whereas we, as the Republic of Kosovo, participated in Defender Europe 21 from March to June last year with 330 soldiers, and we were among 16 hosting countries. And we will also participate in Defender 23.
It is getting harder and harder to motivate people to engage voluntarily. What incentives can be given to attract people to the reserve forces, and how can volunteers be kept motivated through all ages? So how do you do it in Kosovo? Is it a question of payment? Is it a question of serving the country? How do you get reservists in Kosovo?
People of Kosovo are very patriotic, and I think that helps a great deal. And they, in addition, like to get together, work together, because this community feeling, this togetherness, can be achieved through voluntary work. But at the same time is the benefits that you get in terms of knowledge and new experience. I believe that once we will have this contingent of 3,000 reservists in our security forces, we can also link it with medical health sector, with police. But at the same time, I think we can do it with certain faculties of the university. So army is a place where you learn not just by doing, but also by reading and listening to lectures and studying and discussing with others. Definitely now, nations which are progressing, people and societies which are building up and developing are those which are paying a lot of attention to knowledge. To technological innovation and to knowledge, where people who learn more perform better. And I think that security forces in general and reservists in particular can help a great deal in this respect as well.
One last question I see from our audience, and it's about Kosovo. So, what will be the biggest challenge for Kosovo when it comes to security and foreign policy in the foreseeable future? How can Germany support? And then we can ask if Germany can contribute this.
Can deliver.
In terms of security and foreign policy, I think that the most important thing is, in one hand, Serbia to change its course away from Moscow towards EU, and finally acknowledge that recognizing independence of Kosovo helps a great deal also Serbia, not only Kosovo, and brings a great boost to the security and peace in the region. To this end, I believe Germany can help a great deal, because being a pillar and motor of EU has a lot of leverage over Serbia. And on the other hand, we would need help from Germany in our security and defense sector in order to be able to combat different illegal activities and structures, since quite often organized crime, which is cross-border in Western Balkan 6, is very much linked with non-democratic political forces and politicians. So it is important to fight organized crime and corruption, and we have done some great work with our new government. For example, in 1 year, we have had 1,086 police operations, and we have managed to confiscate the highest amount of drugs, narcotics, than in every other year since declaration of independence. So uncorrupted government with well-educated ministers who are middle-class people and don't look after getting rich from politics, because we think that politics is essentially a service, can also have great results in fighting corruption and organized crime, which again I'm emphasizing is very much linked with autocratic political leaders who extract from public funds private wealth for their close circle.
Thank you.